This episode of the Fine Home Building Podcast is brought to you by Andersen Windows. If you're a window installer, you deserve a simple choice: Andersen 400 Series windows. They're the windows contractors trust the most, based on a 2022 survey of U.S. contractors. Probably because they have fewer callbacks and extra peace of mind. And thanks to shortened lead times, they're available faster. Make your go-to windows Andersen 400 Series. Request a quote at andersenwindows.com.
Not going to dehumidify enough unless I leave that door open throughout the day, which would be the other option, and then I could just throw the hose into the floor drain, but what fun is that?
You want a cheap and complicated solution.
Exactly.
Welcome to the Fine Home Building Podcast, a weekly discussion of building, remodeling, and design topics aimed at anybody who cares deeply about the craft and science of working on houses. This is Senior Editor Patrick McComb. Today I'm joined by Ian Schwant, Production Manager for TDS Custom Construction.
How you doing, Patrick?
Good to see you, Ian. Andrew Zellner, Editorial Director for Fine Home Building and Green Building Advisor.
Happy to be here.
And our producer, Jeff Rose.
Hi there.
You can find previous podcasts and check out the show notes at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. Please email us your questions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. Well, it's a pleasure to see you guys. Thanks for being on the show.
Absolutely.
What's been going on in your life, Ian? You working on your place still?
Lots of landscaping. We continuing with planting, and more planting. And last weekend we put out the drip tape irrigation system with the timer on it, so that can't forget to water things, and put in a lot of tomato plants and raspberry bushes and all that good stuff.
Do you find that to be an enjoyable process, or is that a lot of work?
Not particularly. It makes Sarah really happy to have all the stuff, and it's a cool use of space, and it's great that we have the area to do that in. So it's not my ideal way to spend 3 weekends in a row.
Does your dad let you guys use his loader bucket on his tractor to move this stuff around?
We do sometimes. We rigged up one of the cultivators to do the rows for us.
I don't even know what a cultivator is.
It's part of turning land over, but we modified one so it actually digs the rows out for us. So then all we have to do is put the plants in and cover them up. So that works nice. But we're thinking about getting a tiller attachment for the Ford 8N that we have, so that we don't have to use the push tiller next year. So we're making pathways and keeping the weeds down.
How big a garden bed are we talking about?
I think it's like 1/4 of an acre.
Oh, good gravy. Good for
So
you.
as soon as you start describing a garden bed in acreage, I think it's more than a garden bed.
Yeah, it's a field. It's the low end of our lot that we built the house on. So,
is it good soil? Do you have to amend it?
It's pretty good down there. That's the best tillable soil part of where we built the house. We kind of built the house on a knob that wasn't great soil to begin with, so it made sense to build the house there. But.
Sure. How about you, Andrew? You got outdoor projects, indoor projects?
Well, as you can see, I'm in a hotel room right now, and it's not because I did something crazy to my house and it fell down. I actually got out to see the whole team here in Connecticut this week. But looking forward to getting back to the house because the projects are never ending. One of the things on my list for this summer is taking stock of our upstairs floor, because it's multiple level, or it's all one level, but it's multiple kinds of flooring at different thicknesses, and there's some humps and valleys, and some of that's under carpet. So it's a little bit of discovery and figuring out what you got and then dealing with it. So.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Yeah. New subflooring. How exciting.
Yeah. And I know for sure there's at least asbestos tiles in a closet, but I don't know how far they expand beyond that closet.
So is the plan to have like some kind of uniform flooring material throughout the space?
Yeah, I'm hoping to do engineered hardwood through the whole upstairs. And I happened to win a little over 1,000 square feet at an auction last fall. So
what? Do you get to pick the species, or what is it?
So it's I think it's Brazilian oak, which is Tari. And so there's a high-end flooring company in one of the suburbs of Minneapolis that will have various quantities of hardwood flooring left over from big projects. And I bid on 350 square foot lots and won all 3 of them. And it was it came to, like 75 cents a square foot. So
that is fantastic. Good for you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So is it glue down or is it nail down?
It's nailed down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Longtime listeners to the podcast are going to want to know if you brought your tools with you to repair anything in your hotel room.
I did not, but I sort of wish I would have. It's a La Quinta Inn. It's not
only the best for Taunton employees.
It's not necessarily a fresh hotel. One of the things that really gets me though is if even when they redo a hotel room, they often don't put in new switch plates and cover plates, and that's the thing that makes something like a freshly painted wall feel old to me.
Is grimy wall plates. Yeah. Especially in a hotel room.
Was that you, Patrick, that was fixing doorknobs in hotels, or was that somebody else? Is that Brian, maybe?
That was a conversation on building knowledge about going to places, and do you fix the things that are easily fixed in your hotel room, and to what extent do you fix more complicated things? Do you give the maintenance team guidance on the repairs? It was hilarious. It was hilarious. I'm saddened that you can't bring a Leatherman with you anymore, really, because I would to make my life better, right? In the hotel room.
Speaking of auctions, the Minneapolis Airport Commission, or I guess it's Metropolitan Airport Commission, the Minnesota state government auction site will also auction off pounds of confiscated knives and Leatherman from the airport line.
You buy it in bin quantities, right?
Yeah,
it's
it's 60 Leathermans for $100.
What's the pound price for a bucket of Leathermans?
That's hilarious.
I feel like I've worked with guys in the field who would buy them that way. It'd be like, ooh, 5-gallon bucket full of Leathermans from the airport.
Oh man, and it would be the thrill of the chase, right? What are you going to get in there would be the excitement for me.
Do a whole unbucketing YouTube video of that.
I bet that exists, Ian. I really do. Anything else you want to talk about? Your trip to Connecticut, Andrew?
So, this was one of the first times our whole team was able to get together in person. Some of us met each other in person for the first time. It's always a surprise to see how tall people are. We've got a much shorter team than I was anticipating, Patrick.
I met some folks for the first time. It was super fun, really nice. And that time together is not to be undervalued. It was hugely helpful for me, I got to say. And super fun. Yeah.
We've got a fun group of folks, and so hoping to do it again real soon.
Me too. Jeff, what have you been up to?
Not a whole heck of a lot. Just, very miscellaneous yard work and stuff around the house, but nothing important.
Yeah, we've been, Carol has been moving yards of mulch, and that continues. I built a little cabinet in the barn to house banquet tables and card tables and a pair of my folding sawhorses, because these are things we use for projects, and they didn't really have a home. They were always just kind of leaning against the wall, and it drove me crazy enough to spend almost $1,000 to build this cabinet. It was fun.
I did spend just over $300 on supplies for building our sawhorses, Patrick.
Yeah, and it was what, a dozen 2x4s?
Yeah,
do you remember how
a dozen
many?
2x4s and 2 sheets of 3/4 inch plywood.
I think things are getting better. I think prices are on the downward trend commodity wise, right, Ian?
Yeah, we're below like $5 a stick now. Again, I think 450, something like that. And sheet goods are back to, that 40 some odd dollars a sheet for floor sheathing. But metal and anything made of plastic is still very expensive.
That's a lot of stuff. What about like availability? Have you had trouble getting any stuff recently for the business?
No,
No.
we just placed a large order this week for some pressure treated material for a big deck. So we'll see if that comes when it's supposed to come. Right now, I'm getting the "I have to get back to you" message from the lumber yard on the lead time. So it's not confidence inspiring.
Have Andrew or Jeff, have you noticed any materials you've tried to get or in short supply or not at the place you'd normally buy them?
Nothing really, like I've always been able to get my dozen 2x4s, but instead of them being $8 or $10 a piece, they were only $5 a piece when I bought them today. So,
well, it's evolving. Stay tuned to the after show because we're going to talk a little bit about how things are likely to go or how we guess they might go.
We're going to prognosticate.
I like to call it, we're going to predict the future. So
you all want to listen because you're going to want to do your commodities buying based on what we have to say. I guarantee it. As always, we heard from our listeners. This comes from Carson from Oregon. Hi, FHB crew. Thanks again for running the great podcast. In regards to the question posed in episode 465 about zip panel exposure, I can offer my own experience. Zip panels are rated for 180 days of exposure according to Huber and specifically must be covered by finished siding before then. The recommended fix to me over email for this was to cover the zip in house wrap. My builder went beyond the date, sadly. We ended up covering it all in Tyvek. It was a bit of a Frankenstein build at that point as the windows still drained to the zip, which is then covered by Tyvek. I suppose it's probably fine as water can hopefully still get out from behind the Tyvek thanks to the rain screen detail. Huber made no mention of air sealing potential after 180 days. So I guess what he means is they don't make any claims about the tape or its durability after it's been exposed for 180 days. And many folks use zip system sheathing as an air barrier because it's pretty easy and durable, right? That's what you did, right, Ian?
Exactly. Yeah. And some of mine was exposed for more than 180 days, and I just winged it. I think, like we were talking about on the episode that he's referring to, you take a look at it, and it's not. It didn't look like the UV had beaten it up that badly to me, as far as the fade and color change to it.
I can tell you there was a piece outside of the Taunton offices that had to have been there for years. And it was still in pretty good shape. It was not in direct sun, but it got some sun.
Yeah, the other thing I thought of too is mine was exposed for, I think it was probably close to 200 days, but it was over fall and winter. And I figured it's not getting the worst of the sun. So I was erring on the 180 days of prime, middle of the year, Fairbanks, Alaska kind of sun exposure.
Right.
When I decided to wing it.
Is the UV the thing that you guys would be most worried about?
Aside from the coating abrading, I think that would be the most damaging, but I'm speculating. I don't know what, coatings definitely succumb to UV or are damaged by it. So that's my guess.
Yeah, I thought of it in the same way that you'd think of any painted or finished surface. Any painter I've ever talked to about exterior paints, it's all about the UV.
Carson goes on to ask a question of us. Is there a recommended CAD program for landscape drawing, or is that SketchUp as well? SketchUp 7 is a free version that used to be called SketchUp. make, and you can still download it, but it is not advertised. It is old, but may be fine for basic needs, or at least fine for my cabinetry planning needs. Blender is another free option, though it is designed for studio work and has a far higher learning curve. That's not the first time we heard about Blender, right? Didn't someone else suggest that as a design software?
I would ask Carson, how much do you want to spend? Because I think free options are not many, but I did look up a few, and there's a lot of them out there, but they seem to start at about $1,500 for a seat. For Pro Landscape was one that I found that looked pretty cool. And then it seems like all the BIM modeling ones all have some kind of plugin, like Vectorworks and Revit, all seem to have a landscape plugin. But there you're spending thousands on a professional seat for the software.
What's a BIM, Ian? Forgive
Building
me.
Information modeling.
Okay, is that like that's a platform for these types of things?
I think it's a style. It's similar to calling something CAD, I believe. I'm happy to be corrected by all of the fancy architects who use that technology.
I'd never heard the term. Interesting. This comes from Mike. He says, "Hi, Ian. In last week's FHB podcast, you discussed results of the blower door test on your house." This comes from Mike Guertin, I'm sorry. "I think you noted that the person doing the test had you leave the intake and exhaust vents for the HRV open and unsealed. This may be a mistake depending on the protocol you asked the tester to use to evaluate the house. The commonly used IRC and ANSI ANSI ResNet ICC 380 blower door test requirements call for the intake and exhaust ports of any continuous ventilation system to be sealed at the exterior penetrations. This would include an ERV, HRV, exhaust-only fan like a bath fan, or a supply-only fan delivering fresh air to a ducted HVAC system used for continuous ventilation, or balanced intake exhaust system without energy recovery. JLC posted an article by Randy Williams that outlines all the prep that should be done before a blower door test. See the dampers and vents section where he describes the requirements for ventilation systems." I don't know why he couldn't reference our Randy Williams blower door piece. What's up with that, Andrew? Is he mad at us? What's going on with that? We're going to put Randy's Fine Home Building.
We'll link to the Fine Home Building version in the podcast.
Can we make the JLC link go to the Fine Home Building one too? He says, "I'll bet if those ports had been sealed, the test results would have been under 0.5 air changes per hour. It's amazing how much air can move through a couple of 6-inch ducts. So you likely have a lower than passive house air tightness level. Well done, Mike." Well, when you get a well done from Mike Guertin, I'd say you've done okay.
Yeah, I think in the passive houses all have like a plaque on them from their agency that certifies them.
Yeah,
I'm going to get a metal guy to like engrave that into a piece of stainless steel. So you likely have lower than passive house air tightness. Well done, Mike Guertin. And hang that by my door.
I think it should really be put on a piece of aluminum flashing or something to kind of complete the image, right?
Taking like a copper kick-out flashing and have them do it on that.
Yeah, that's cool. What do you think about this? Who's right?
I think Mike's right. I have a feeling that the guy that I used was using his standard, testing mechanism, which is for, big builders. He does a lot of stuff for the Toll Brothers and William Ryans of the world, who, all they need to do is hit whatever code tells them to hit and move on. So I don't think it was anything wrong on his part, but Mike definitely gave the full rundown there of information.
I found it interesting. If you're using a bath fan for continuous ventilation, you cover it, the port, the exhaust port. But if you're obviously using it intermittently, you don't. I'm kind of confused by that. The duct is still there. The connection to the outdoors is still there.
Yeah, it gets into that certifying a house and the whole test mechanism thing of how you're achieving those numbers. It's not static, right? It's not an exact science. You're you're kind of doing some averaging and some guesswork between a few different test methods.
I hope to hear more from folks who have thoughts on this. This comes from Dave. Hi, Patrick and folks. I just listened to the most recent FHB podcast. I'm pretty sure it was enlightening, fun, and worth my time as ever. He's pretty sure, which might be the nicest thing anyone's ever said. Since you're transitioning from fine air sealing to fine furnace replacement, I thought I would write in with my experience, limited though it is in these matters, because that would be more helpful than yet another voice. What would be more helpful than another voice in the din?
That's all we are, right?
Right.
We're just voices filling the din of your car ride to work.
He says, firstly, I applaud everyone's efforts to get the nation's homes off of fossil fuels. This is vital work and needs to proceed faster than we can possibly manage. Secondly, I think we're all desperately wish that air-to-water heat pumps were where we needed them to be in terms of being powerful enough to work as a plug-and-play replacement for oil and gas boilers, especially for our coldest climates. From what I understand, these heat pumps require low-temperature emitters, which gets into total baseboard replacement with modern radiators, which are either elegant or hideous, depending on your house and taste. Some of these can work for cooling, too. I don't know anyone yet that loves their baseboard heaters, and many are very happy to consider removing them, but quickly change their mind when they see the price tag for this work. Lastly, the fossil fuel alternative to gas and oil boilers is pellet boilers. These can handle high temperature water distribution for baseboard heat. Not everywhere has a robust system for pellet delivery, but it's getting better, I think. Around my area, there are a few companies that deliver them in large, awesome trucks that vacuum pump bulk pellets into site-built hoppers that provide months' worth of heat and hot water. This seems infinitely preferable to the delivery of one or a dozen pallets of bagged pellets. How annoying, all those bags. Some Vermontier than average clients of mine balk at the industrial infrastructure required to produce pellets, to which I counter, as compared to what? Oil? Propane? Thanks as ever for all the work you are doing. Cheers, Dave. That is a great email, Dave. Thank you very much.
I like the Vermontier than average. Are you Vermontier than average, Patrick?
So I could never call myself a Vermonter for a number of reasons, Ian. I think one, to be a true Vermonter has to be born in Vermont. You know, I think some folks are newcomers who Dave are more talking about than true old school Vermonters, I'm guessing. But there are Vermonters of every stripe, I'm sure.
I'd like Dave to write in with like a Vermontier scale and put you on there somewhere.
It's funny. Vermont has direct democracy. I believe it's once or twice a year. You go to town meeting day and you vote on town budgets, school budgets, referendum items, including purchases of salt trucks. Was one memorable discussion I remember about how the town wanted a 10-wheeled truck and the folks on the road did not want a 10-wheeled truck on their roads. Anyway, but every person who commented, you could stand up and speak on behalf of a ballot initiative or whatever, the budget, and everyone would preface their little speech with how many years they had lived in the Vermont town, right?
And all this time, I thought that when people referred to it as the People's Republic of Vermont, that it was a dig on the politics, but it actually is. Wow. I didn't know that.
Have you guys ever seen one of these pellet trucks?
I haven't, but it sounds awesome, right?
It sounds really cool.
Yeah. What do we think about the environmental friendliness of wood pellets? Have either of you or Jeff delved into this?
I have not, other than horror stories from people that I know that have put them in and been overwhelmed by the amount of pallets of pellets they have to have delivered to heat their house.
I believe it was Rob Watzek who rigged up a playground slide to help get them into his basement, which I thought was pretty savvy.
Yeah, on the topic of propane, my tank here at the house was filled yesterday,
Okay.
which was a day that I was waiting for in angst and agony. So it was $2.05 a gallon, which seems super good pricing. But then when I plugged it into my spreadsheet, because I have a spreadsheet for propane and electrical usage, outside of the winter, I had only used about a gallon a day. And when you averaged this tank out back to New Year's Eve when it was delivered, so through the worst part of the winter, I used 1.4 gallons of propane per day.
And you're heating your hot water?
That's hot water, cooking, and the in-floor heat.
Wow, that's incredible. I'm surprised your propane. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, go ahead, Patrick.
I was surprised your propane seems really low from what I've seen around here. Like, right, Jeff?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, $4 or $5.
When I lived in New York, I never paid less than $2.50 a gallon for propane, and I've paid $1.25 here last winter, and then now whatever it was, 205.
Are you like sitting on an oil field or something? Are they pumping this out of the ground into your tank? What is going on?
I have no idea. I'm not questioning it though.
Okay.
Do you want me to call them up and go, why is this so cheap?
It's surprising because I pass a sign or two on the way to Liam's school with the daily price of oil and propane. And as I recall, it's been $4 something per gallon.
And I looked on the U.S. Department of Energy website where you can check all of that stuff in real time. And I think it said the average for my part of Wisconsin was $2.80. So I'm guessing I'm getting some kind of customer sign up discount by being on a recurring fill with them.
Does it make you want to take a really long shower, your affordable propane energy price?
It does.
Yeah.
But I wonder how much oil and propane is used in the manufacture of pellets.
That's my question is, how carbon intensive it is. And where's the wood coming from? That would be another question I would like answered. I know that Burlington, Vermont had what I would describe as, for a period, I think a utility scale pellet co-generating plant. And I'm not sure exactly what they were doing with it, but folks are trying it. This question comes from Alex. Has anyone heard about this company before? And he sent a link to Renorun. It looks like they're only based in a few cities, but for $5 more than the cost of a Home Depot truck, you can have someone else deliver job site materials. Seems like the kind of company that is backed by venture capital and will eventually flop, but that is just my oblique observation, Alex. Had you guys heard of this before?
I have.
No.
Okay.
I have one of my peers in Remodelers Advantage, production manager group, has a company in Boston, and they specialize in interior renovations of condos, and absolutely loves working with the company. Can't say enough good stuff about it. Their business model is really to bring you the 4 tubes of caulk that you forgot to buy. That would cost you, hundreds of dollars to send a guy from a high rise in Boston to a Home Depot and back to get. That's their bread and butter. And he said you go on the app and they have guys stationed at Home Depots all over the city and just ready to pick the stuff up and drive it over. You can schedule deliveries with him. He's been really happy with it. But again, I think they're only in Montreal, Boston, Philadelphia, and DC, I believe.
I think it's fantastic. What a smart idea. If anyone listening has used this service, I would love to learn more about it, what you've purchased. So is it only Home Depot stock, or did they go to your local lumber yard? I mean,
I think Home Depot is their bread and butter, but he did say when we were talking about it that they'll go anywhere. If you need specialty paint or whatever, you can order it through the app and just tell them where to go get it.
So I'm sure there are folks who are listening that understand when you said it costs, hundreds of dollars to send someone to the lumber yard on a commercial project. Can you briefly talk about why it's so expensive, Ian?
Well, if you think about just the time involved, so if you have a tradesperson set down their tools, go down, get in their truck, drive to Home Depot and back, maybe they're gone for an hour and a half. So if you're billing that person out at $100 an hour, that's $150 of money you just spent to go pick up 4 tubes of caulk. When you can just call a company like this, and that person.
And on top of that, that person is not doing the job they're supposed to be doing, right? So it's a double hit. Yeah,
that's the second half of it. So it's really like it's costing you $300 plus the price of 4 tubes of caulk.
I think I know what to charge if I, start my own Home Depot errand business, right?
He said it's expensive, but it's still cheaper than sending his people to do the pickup.
Yeah.
I even tell the people at TDS that work in the field for us that even if they charge $200 to deliver something, it's infinitely less expensive than you going over there with a vehicle and burning fuel and time.
I would walk around the entire job site and have a decent order, right? You try and make the most of that delivery fee that you could. Yeah.
But if you get to a point where, you're on a Friday and you don't want to send people back there on Monday and you really do need 4 tubes of caulk to finish up something, that's the way to go.
It's cheap. It's way cheaper than going back there. Absolutely.
I think it's interesting. Because I've been traveling, I've taken a few Ubers over the last week, and they're way more expensive than they used to be. And I think it's that same thing of the venture capital money is running out, and they're no longer subsidized by that giant pile of money, and so now the actual cost of them is a little bit more cost prohibitive than they used to be. It's not just $10 will get you across town. It's $30 will get you across town,
My guess is Uber drivers want more money like the rest of us and need more money. Like when gas is $5 a gallon, boy, that's going to cut into the earnings doing your Uber gig.
Absolutely.
Jeff, what do you think about this Renorun situation here?
I think it makes a ton of sense. I mean, it's sort of the DoorDash Grubhub of construction.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. Well, please, folks, if you have used this company or some similar services, we'd love to hear your experience. What was the situation? What did you buy, and how did it work out? I would love to know. Ian, you had a question that I think we should just go right to. You mentioned in an email to me that your basement living space needs dehumidification. Can you talk about that?
So what we have found, even on the really, really hot days that we've had this week, we had, I think, 100-degree day and just below 100-degree day. Both days were very humid, but in our basement living spaces, like where I am now in my office, they still remained pretty cool, which meant that our mini splits are not running, which means we're not dehumidifying. And I already have the HRV turned down on its lowest setting, so I'm not bringing in humid air.
We should tell folks that your summertime humidity can be very high, right? Like off the charts high, right?
Yeah, like tropical country, jungle high, apocalypse now kind of high. Yeah. But so it's become a bit of a struggle to keep the temperature from just being like meat locker like down here. Because I can turn the one mini split on the dry setting and I can quickly suck all the humidity out, but it drops the temperature down here. I think I had it as low as 52 one day from dehumidifying, which is why I'm wearing a sweatshirt in my office on a day when it's like 90 something outside. So I need some help with coming up with, I would prefer a low tech kind of dehumidifier. I looked into a lot of the stuff that's on GBA about things from like Santa Fe and bigger
I think that's
Honeywell
bigger than what you
units.
need too. So Ian is talking about a whole house dehumidifier or just a large dehumidifier. Like if your crawl space is dripping with water, you can use one of these big appliances to dry it out. Some folks use them in really humid places instead of their air conditioner. For Ian's problem, which is that they need additional dehumidification, and that's a way to do it and not run your central air, because you can make your house like a meat locker, right?
Yeah, and one of the things that I want to run by you, Patrick, is should I go to the extent of getting one of these small dehumidifiers that also drains so that I don't have to
Empty a
the
bucket.
reservoir? And should I come up with some like Rube Goldberg style device for emptying this into an existing drain line in one of the bathrooms?
So I'm guessing you just don't have a floor drain to dump this into, correct?
There's a floor drain in the mechanical room, but I am a little bit concerned that putting it in the mechanical room and closing the door, it's not going to dehumidify enough unless I leave that door open throughout the day, which would be the other option. And then I could just throw the hose into the floor drain, but what fun is that?
You want a cheap and complicated solution.
Exactly. Yes, I want incredibly complex but cheap. Just like people looking for landscape CAD software.
Well, I think you nailed it. Of course, it's a portable dehumidifier because you don't need the capacity of the Santa Fe built-in thing, right? Or April Air is the other big company that makes those.
Yeah. If I get one of the portable ones, would you put fans in any of the rooms to circulate the air?
No, Ian, only based on my own experience with my 6 foot by 30 foot long basement. I have the dehumidifier plugged into the receptacle that's next to the electrical panel, which is at the far end of the basement, and it does a fine job doing the whole space. And there's no movement or circulation in there. Whereas you're going to be walking around your basement
Right.
and opening doors and closing doors and moving air around. So I wouldn't worry about it until you found it to be a problem.
Cool. I'll give it a try and report back on whether it was a failure or not.
Where does the floor drain go? I'm presuming it goes to the foundation drain because your site is pretty low slope. Am I right?
Yeah, I believe that the drain is actually connected to my septic system, if I'm not mistaken. I'd have to look at my pictures of when it was plumbed in, but I'm almost certain it's got a trap on it and it goes into the where the rest of the effluent goes.
I feel better about that than I would about you dumping a bunch of water into your footing drains, right?
Right.
Like, I mean, it may drain and dry out, or it may not. Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of my first kooky ideas was, can I just hook it up to my sump crock and have it drain in there? But then I kind of got to the same spot as what you just said. Like, that's probably not the best place to put it.
Yeah, I think like that when that system needs to work, it needs all of the capacity that's available. You don't want part of it, I'm guessing.
Yeah. I got plenty of outlets in the mechanical room. I'll put it in there and leave the door open during the day.
Jeff, Andrew, any thoughts on Ian's basement?
I've got a portable dehumidifier in my basement, and I don't have any floor drains. So like that's the thing that gets me during the summer is like I'll empty it once a week, and it's nice for that day, and then it goes back up. So it's getting it to empty automatically seems like the hardest part.
I've solved that, but it's come with its own cost and complexity, and it's having a teenage son, and that's hard to imagine it's a wash.
Right.
I don't want to see the spreadsheet on that cost benefit analysis.
This comes from James. He originally posted this on the GBA website. Hello again, GBA's Zone 2A new build, nail fin windows in plane with the sheathing, the WRB 1/2 inch rain screen with 5/4 inch live edge siding and 3x trim, mounted to, there's steel head flashings on both the windows and the trim. Questions. With respect to the flashing head trim, how far should it project? A general rule for windows, 1/4 inch, I think, but I've heard that for trim, when the window is below has a metal drip cap, 0 projection is okay, because any water that runs down the face of the trim and wicks underneath will just land on the window's head flashing. Okay, so how far should our head flashing project, team? Do we have a consensus on this?
I usually go 1/4 inch.
I think that's what
Yeah.
or more, right? More wouldn't be
More,
bad, but
to his point, more can look a little wacky.
Yeah.
Depending on how close you're going to stand to the window. Maybe on a second story window, going more than 1/4 wouldn't be that big of a deal.
He asked, does a 5/16 inch long drip leg plus a 1/4 inch L kickout sound okay? So we should describe aluminum drip cap has a little like extra bend at the end of it, right? And it's meant to break the water surface tension, so it drips instead of flowing back onto the underside, which could then potentially get into the top of the window, right? Is that sound legit? He asks. Making these elements as big as hammer in hand, and FHB recommends, covers up a lot of the window frames head casing. It looks bad on double hungs, right? So if you're making that hang down lower, his point is that not as much trim is going to show, and I think
Right.
it's a good point. Do we mind? Do we mind enough that we make the trim wider, or do we make the leg shorter?
Yeah, that's a good question that I think requires an architecture degree.
Well, so he said he made a prototype. Like, could you test it?
Yeah. What does it look like to me? Yeah, I think that's, yeah. And I think, dealing with a head casing that's a 1/4 inch different than the other sides potentially would be kind of a hassle and a expensive way to go, right? You're going to have to buy a much bigger board for that 1/4 inch. My head flashings have end dams, and I've seen builders like Malcolm Taylor here suggest that you should cut small notches in the head casing to allow it to be lowered over your end dams, the normal 1/4 inch gap with the trim and window frame. So does anyone want, Ian, can you describe what an end dam is on a head flashing?
Not exactly. I'm not picturing what he's got going on there. I've been trying to. Is he talking about where it just wraps around?
I think it's a little bend on the ends of the head flashing that go over the end grain of the head casing. And his question is, do you make little tiny notches so the metal is in profile with the edge of the casing? And I think that's ridiculous.
I agree.
Personally.
I was really thrown off by thinking, like, is that what he's talking about? Man, that seems like a lot of work. But we used to call them end caps, I guess. Instead of end dams.
So
same thing, I guess.
I've heard end dams describe bends that go down, but I think more accurately describes when they make the bends up.
Sure.
Which channels the water over the
Right.
front of the drip leg, drip cap, which is what you want.
Right.
What do you guys think of the bending up the ends of the head flashing? Do we like
My
the look?
feeling is that if you have a properly installed rain screen behind your siding, this is an awful lot of unnecessary work. But I would imagine I'm going to get roasted by some people for that comment.
Well, I think even if you think it's overkill for water management, I think the aesthetics are a legitimate question, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Andrew's nodding. Jeff, what do you think? Is this all getting in the weeds with what we're doing here?
I think it's out there. I'm not sure that it's in the weeds, but I mean, it also, it's like for an ordinary house, it's in the weeds. For a really high-end house, it's not. And
if you're doing it yourself, I would argue the work is the same. I mean, excepting making little tiny notches for the the head flashing.
The one place where I've seen people really put this amount of time into something where it made sense to me was in like flashing window sill pans and door sill pans before you install windows and doors on an exposure that's going to get a lot of weather hitting it. I've seen a lot of pretty fancy copper work that got buried behind trim and doors that was done solely to
keep out wind-driven rain, right?
Yeah.
I think this is an interesting question. I've seen really high attention to detail, head flashing on historic park buildings, often of copper, often have what I would describe as end dams, where the ends of the head flashing are bent up to channel water out. And of course, this is a New Englandy thing on high-end buildings. This was just what you did. And I think that's where the tradition comes from. And, you know, back in the day, you didn't have rain screen siding. If water got in behind the siding, it was in your house, you know, so.
Right.
I think that's an interesting point. Is this like an old school New England thing that because of other building methods now is rendered like artsy and kind of obsolete?
I think it very much might be like that. I've seen like this done at, historic Williamsburg too, probably for similar, weather resistance more than anything, you know.
So this is now New Englandier than average?
Yes, it's very New Englandier. I'd call out my former boss, Mason Lord, and tell him to write in on this because he's done a lot of.
He's likely listening, so.
I know he's likely listening. So, new builds and stuff that he's done for people and his historic background. I would be really interested to hear from Mason on this one.
I think done well, it's really pretty cool. I can tell you it definitely complicates wood siding and to be real with the end dams. You know, you got to cut little notches, and they got to be big enough that the wood can expand and contract. And yeah. Anywho, all right, you guys ready for this? This comes from Barbara.
The Barbara.
Yes. Yeah, the Barbara.
That's trademarked by Ohio State now, though. So.
Yeah, I think Barbara should be able to be the Barbara.
Well, we hear from Barbara a lot. It is a pleasure to have a question from her. I think it's awesome. And Ian, I think it was you made mention that she might have been making a Windsor chair or have made a Windsor chair. Did you see the email from her?
No.
I will forward it to you. I apologize I didn't ahead of the show, but she wanted to let you know that she had not made a Windsor chair, but she had and was working on removing the failed laminations from the solid core doors to make a workbench top for her Harbor Freight rolling tool bench.
Cool.
So she, she was working on a woodworking project, but not a Windsor chair. And she said if she found a Windsor chair and could restore it, she would do that, but she was not going to spend the time and energy to make her own. So I think she's going to change her mind after hearing me talk about it. She's going to see it as a challenge, right? Hello, podcast. My shed is nice and big, 30 by 35, but it can never be made to keep out mice and birds. So I want to build a 12 by 14 room in the northeast corner. The two interior walls will be made of old sliding glass doors I've been saving. The indoor roof will be made of salvaged pro panel, the same stuff the building is made of, pitched enough so the wrens can't build a nest on it. I will move my home's mini split to the space and upgrade my house to a newer, quieter model. Then I'll be able to set up a laser cutter and 3D printer or other tools that require humidity control. I have two questions about this. One, what would you use to seal and insulate the existing corrugated steel exterior walls? Okay. Two, what do I buy to build an airtight plate glass wall? Okay. Question two. She goes on, my shed used to have the other corner insulated with fiberglass with particle board for interior walls and a big wall of particle board cabinets. When I came back to this abandoned property about 20 years ago, I removed all of that. The trauma of the experience is probably why I never used processed wood sheet goods of any kind again. The main tool for the job was a flat bladed shovel for stripping walls. Never again.
I can visualize that. It's
Yeah.
like writing a novel there. I can see her scraping the wall off with her flat-bladed shovel.
The space between the bottom plate and the high ribs of the panels on those two walls were stopped up with rubber plugs. See photo. It was not airtight. There is a sort of a lip on the bottom of the slab that the panels sit on, but they are pretty much touching the ground. I need to grade around the uphill side because soil has built up over the years and could be taken down quite a bit. Even after I do that, the bottom mustn't wick water up from the outside. My bottom plates are in good shape because they've been able to dry out this whole time. If I build a wall and then rot them out, I'll never forgive myself. I'm absolutely certain there's a good vapor barrier below the slab. My father built this shed and he has never poured a slab without Visqueen and wire mesh. I bet his boat ramps have Visqueen. We should tell folks Visqueen is sheet plastic. I think it's a brand originally. Okay. I have watched enough YouTube mousetrap videos to know that caulk is the best barrier to mice. I bet it works on insects too. What if I just squeeze about 1/4 cup of big stretch in those high ribs behind the bottom plate and then shove in a section of foam from a pool noodle like a big backer rod, and then just keep going with a good bead of caulk between the bottom plate and the steel. The great stuff just doesn't seem impermeable enough to me. I guess the key is to get it in there with a bottle brush and sudsy water and scrub it really good and blast it clean with compressed air and let it be good and dry before I do whatever it is I do to seal this. After I seal up the edges, should I try rock wool insulation? What do you think it will do against galvanized steel? Remember, I'm in zone 2. It's hot and humid, although it barely gets below freezing. The slab bridging between conditioned and unconditioned space is not a big deal. I just want to keep animals and water vapor out. I usually use isonine spray foam a lot, but I would like this shed job to be reversible. I can imagine somebody might want to disassemble the whole thing one day and reuse the materials in a more aesthetic building. But a sprayed application would conform to the shape of the steel and provide a better air seal. And I could have them do the underside of the metal ceiling/roof at the same time. Then I wouldn't have to figure out how to get insulation to stay up there when I only have purlins on 4-foot centers. I guess the sheets of foam that are 4x8 would work, but those won't fit in my car. If I've got to pay for delivery, I might as well get a spray foam contractor. It's a tough call. I guess I have to run the numbers and choose the cheaper way. She asked, is rock wool stiff enough to stay up there? I might splurge on tongue and groove pine ceilings in the future so I can hang lights and camera mounts wherever I want. And the ceiling will be the only part of the shop that won't get covered up with projects, so I would like it to be prettiest. I guess I can put up a few ceiling boards and then shove the bats of insulation as I go along. All right, so should we talk about, there's more here, but let's get to Barbara's envelope. I think that's a good place to stop. So we need a solution for insulating her walls and air sealing this transition between her steel siding and the concrete slab this post frame building is built on. Who wants to go?
It seems like you just spray foam the whole thing.
Okay. We got Andrew's
Two
vote
votes for spray foam.
2 votes for spray foaming. Jeff, do you have a opinion on this?
I was coming up with some really bizarre things, but nothing that I think made much sense. It was a lot more labor intensive, but just.
Although I would love to see someone using measuring their caulk in half cups or full cups, just cutting that tube in half and pouring it.
I would totally call Sashco and ask if you can get a different package size, right, than a 1/10 of a gallon caulking tube.
I think you'd want to use a commercial product that you could get in a sausage, and then use a sausage gun instead of a caulk gun. Because you could just not put the nozzle on it, and that would get you about an inch and a half. And then
That's
tool it
the
with your elbow.
dollop dispenser, right?
Yeah.
I do love the idea of using the pool noodle in combination with canned spray foam. But as you guys suggest, spray foam is the answer, Barbara. I'm sorry, I don't like spray foam a lot, but I think it's just you're going to be able to use your building, right? Instead of futzing around with this, do the stuff you want to do. And I mean, if you love air sealing with pool noodles, have at it. But
I think this falls under the trap that, and Andrew can back me up on this maybe, that people run into with their shop spaces is they develop this just like picture of the perfect shop, and then they spend a lot of time building their shop and never building anything in the shop. Do you run into that, Andrew?
Oh, absolutely. I go in there, with the intention of doing something very simple, making a box to hold something. And 4 hours later, I've organized my clamps in a new way that opens up another 4 square feet of wall space.
There's definitely a variety of woodworker whose woodworking is related to building jigs, to make jigs and fixtures to hang things. It's pretty. People have accused me of that.
Have you alphabetized your brake fluid and whatever else you find you on that shelf recently? Looks like you.
I thought you were going in Colors of the Rainbow organization. But.
It looks like you might have an STP to the left of the Pennzoil that should maybe be switched around.
That's hilarious.
Valvoline in the middle. I don't get it. That's right.
Barbara, the Rockwool, that's a great product. It's not an air barrier, so you're going to have to put something on the inside to make it do anything, so...
And she would have to put it up as she did the ceiling. I don't see any other way around it.
The purlins just aren't close enough to do anything else, right? Yeah, that sounds awful.
There's a reason that I think it's Randy Williams can build the barn dominium like he is, because he's doing it from scratch and controlling every step along the way, and making this kind of an assembly work by controlling the whole thing and not working with a building that exists.
I think Randy would tell you, even in his new build, it's more complicated than he expected. A post-frame building, I think, is very challenging to make reasonably airtight. Okay, so Barbara wants to ask about her plate glass walls. She says, about the plate glass walls, I don't have the door tracks anymore. I sold them for scrap years ago. There's good money in extruding aluminum, she says. I can take the aluminum frames off the glass and just have double pane tempered panels. I have 8 doors, 4 each of 4 foot and 3 foot widths. I figured there would be some kind of wood or PVC profile that I could buy that is made for this. They do it in offices all the time. I usually find this stuff online, but this has me stumped. Plate glass window on the floor. What? How? I've done it before, but my solution was wacky. I left the aluminum frame on the glass and just plonked it right down on a piece of hardy plank caulk to the floor. I then caulked on some brick mold for a stop. There has got to be a better way. Do you think Chuck Miller has a solution for recycled glass panels? She says, thanks for weighing in on all this. I'm not going to start this until it cools off, so I'm going to wait and see if you all have any good ideas. There you go. I think you just need to put the glass panels in wood frames. Am I right about that?
I think in your case, yeah.
You're making what fixed windows, right? You're putting them in a frame with a stop, either a rabbeted frame and a stop, or a stop on both sides into a flat stocked frame.
And so, is she making a room inside the shed that will be conditioned, or is the whole
shed? So she can put
Okay.
her 3D printer in there and have it temperature and humidity controlled. I'm guessing those things are probably pretty temperamental in Georgia in the summertime. I wonder if
I
you
have to agree with Barbara's sentiment about Googling and searching on the internet for profiles of aluminum to hold glass. We've always, Sarah and I wanted to build a greenhouse, and anytime I, look at the kits, I'm like, that's so expensive. I got to be able to find the parts. And I think you have to be like a glass tradesperson to have access to those materials. I just have not found anywhere to source them yet.
Is this a good thing to ask our listeners about?
I think
Maybe,
it is. I think we need some glass manufacturing tradesperson out there to point us in the right direction, or confirm mine and Barbara's suspicions that no fancy parts for you, non-glass person.
And she's right. You see this a lot in office spaces. Like someone's making this stuff, right?
Yeah, just not selling it to the common person looking to build a airtight plate glass wall in their shed.
I like that Barbara is using old door panels because doors are made of tempered glass. Yep. You would not want to do this in a shop with normal glass, right? Because that would be insane. Inevitably, you're going to crash into it and hurt yourself. I'm lucky I have pretty soft surfaces around here to protect myself. Any further advice for Barbara? Thanks, Barbara.
Send pictures. Let me know when you're going to start this, and I'll come down and help you because it sounds awesome.
Yeah, totally. And I'll send you guys the photos of Barbara's Airstream trailer and workbench project because that was pretty cool to see. Well, unfortunately, that is all that. Oh my gosh! Wait, I almost forgot to tell folks to stay tuned for our after show.
Yeah, Patrick, you forgot the after show only for our members of Fine Home Building. And it's this one is going to be particularly interesting because we're going to try to predict the future. And we'll talk a little bit about major economic changes potentially on the way, how builders, businesses, people in the trades, weathered the last one, things they should be thinking about going into it. I think sort of everyone's on edge about the economy, and we'll make you feel all right about it. Don't worry about it.
Listen to the boss. Everything's going to be fine.
He is a sunny optimist. I give him that. All right. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks to Ian, Andrew, and Jeff for joining me, and thanks to all of you for listening. Please remember to send us your comments, questions, suggestions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. And please like, comment, or review us however you're listening. It helps other folks find our podcast. Stay safe, everybody. Keep craft alive and happy building. Come back for the after show, too.